It's that time again. That's right. It's the Banlist prediction time. What's up, everybody? Ryco here. Today, we've got the Banlist prediction. Everybody loves this time of the year because the best decks in the room get knocked down a few pegs, some decks that need some much needed love get some cards back, and overall, the meta gets shaken up. Whether or not it's completely or just a little bit, no matter what, there are going to be some changes. And we're going to be predicting them today. Before we jump right in though, I wanted to take a moment to thank you all so much for your support. You guys are all awesome. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that way you can stay tuned for some more awesome content. But with that being said, you know what? Let's just jump right in. So, starting off with the first card I wanted to talk about, that's Appaloosa. I'm pretty sure most of you will agree with this, but it's time for Appaloosa to go. It's too generic and too many decks make it. And although it's not the most oppressive card in the world, when paired with other things that make your end board really good, this just makes your end board that much better. And although some decks can get around Appaloosa pretty easily, there are still a lot of decks that just fold to a single Appaloosa, especially if they don't draw something like Imperm or Droplet to help deal with it. All in all, it's not the most oppressive card in the world, but it's definitely time for it to go. And I'm sure many of you won't be too upset about that either. Going for the next card, we've got Calamity. The fact that this card still isn't banned blows my mind. This card is one of the most uninteractive, unfun cards you can play against. Not being able to activate anything in a turn is essentially a turn skip. And if you know me by now, you know I don't really like turn skips. Yes, I'll play my Akashi Trap sometimes in Tier Lament, but that's a different story. Tier Lament is a base deck. This is usually in synchro piles, and yes, synchro decks can be fun, but again, uninteractive with your opponent, and especially since Centurion's a deck, it's way too easy for decks to make. All in all, this should have probably been banned a while ago, but hopefully, Konami will take this card out back and give it the old Yeller treatment. Anyway, moving on to the next card, we've got Beatrice. Beatrice is a really good card, and anything that's just a generic dump any card to the deck is really good, and Beatrice can do that twice on your turn and your opponent's turn. Making rank 6s with the new Fiendsmith cards are going to be easier than ever before. And although this would be a bit of a preemptive hit, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would agree Beatrice is going to be way too strong going into the next meta and will be way too oppressive to deal with overall. All in all, I think it's time for Beatrice to go, and I think a lot of you all would agree with me on that. Going on to the next banned card, we've got Sanctifier. Kind of like Calamity, I'm surprised this card lasted this long. All in all, in theory, this card isn't super oppressive, but when paired with something like the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare or Eidos, it's so good. Being able to lock your opponent out of special summoning or summoning at all, plus it being untargetable, and you can't use it as fusion material, so you can't super poly it away. It's basically draw Droplet, draw Bestial, or bust. All in all, this just creates some really unfun game states and turns Branded into a pseudo FTK deck. And given how easy they can access this, it's definitely time for this card to go. Moving on to the last card we have on the forbidden list, and that is Anti-Spell Fragrance. Do I need to say more? It's Anti-Spell Fragrance. You build a board, make your board super broken to go against, and then you just flip Anti-Spell in the draw phase and laugh at your opponent as they have 6 spells in hand and can't do anything. This card is super oppressive, and the fact that it's at 1 means it's just that much more sacky. Floodgates, I'm really happy they're starting to leave, but it's definitely time for this card to be banned, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree with me as well. So that's the 5 cards I have on the forbidden list. Going on to the limited section, we have Meow Meow Mew. Now, I know a lot of you all don't really like prank kids that much, but I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Overall, Link 1s can be very scary to play against, but given how fast the meta has gotten and how easy it is to beat prank kids, getting Meow back at 1 wouldn't really do anything. And if anything, it'll just shake up the meta that much more and just give another deck that's competitively viable. It's not super oppressive. It has some very clear choke points, and overall, the decks are a lot faster and do a lot more nowadays. And having a double Raigeki, it's not that good anymore. And given how many hand traps are being played too, this deck wouldn't be that bad to play against. All in all, it's time for Meow to come back off the list. Continuing with the limit cards, I have Wanted. This is pretty obvious, but Wanted is just better Sky Striker Engage. And Wanted being full combo plus a draw is a bit absurd. So in order to hit the consistency of Snake Eyes a bit, I not only put Wanted on the limited list, but also Snake Eye Ash. It wouldn't kill the deck. The deck still is going to be the best deck, but having some consistency hits means that they're not going to full combo you every single game, every single match, all day, every day. No, it's going to make it to where it's a lot easier to deal with, and also their follow-up's going to be a lot worse. All in all, limiting these cards is perfect for now. It's still a bit too early to completely kill Snake Eyes, but something definitely needs to happen here because Snake Eyes has just been way too oppressive for what seems to be a good while now. Continuing with the limited list, I actually have Ostinato. Ostinato is arguably one of the most broken cards in the game. For example, if you're playing this card in the Snake Eyes variant, this card on its own is a plus 11 and it's not once per turn. Let me repeat that. Plus 11 and it's not once per turn. Konami, deal with this card. Now, if you put it at 1, and the reason why it's not banned, but if you put it at 1, that means the splash ability of the Melodious package will go down exponentially, as you'll have to play too many bricks versus starters to justify committing that much space to a deck. However, keeping Ostinato at 1 means the pure deck isn't dying. Those who are playing pure Melodious can still have access to their 1 Ostinato, and given that Prosperity is at 3, it may not be for long, we'll get to that in a moment, but as of now, it's still at 3. Ostinato would be a perfect hit, as it's just that perfect balance. It gives you so much advantage, but it's not super oppressive in its own deck. It's not super oppressive in the Melodious deck. It only gets a bit ridiculous when it's splashed into other decks and you go plus infinite off this card before committing to your normal summon or any other part of your engine. All in all, putting this card to 1 would be fine. It would also make it to where if you Ash Ostinato or Bell Ostinato, they can't just activate another one because it's not once per turn. All in all, Ostinato to 1, I think that's a solid choice. Going to the next card, we have Skill Drain. Now, this is a floodgate, but it's not as oppressive as something like Anti-Spell. Skill Drain, out of all the floodgates out there, is probably one of the easier floodgates to play through because you can still tribute stuff as cost, and there are certain ways to out a Skill Drain that just overall is easier to deal with than other floodgates. It's still a floodgate. It's still oppressive, and if your opponent full combos you and then just flips Skill Drain when you try and do something, it's very obnoxious. However, having it at 1 with, for example, Anti-Spell getting banned, it would make it to where it's a lot easier to deal with, and if they only have 1 Skill Drain, you just have to clear that 1 Skill Drain once, and then you're done dealing with it. All in all, putting Skill Drain to 1 with Gozen, Rivalry, and Tikaboo is fine, especially since Gozen, Rivalry, and Tikaboo are arguably better than Skill Drain, but those aren't banned, those are limited. So all in all, Skill Drain being at 1, I think nobody would complain about that. Moving on to the next card to be limited, that's Heavy Storm. Let's be real. We have 2 Lightning Storm, a Harpy's Feather Duster, we have Cosmic Cyclones, Twin Twisters. Would it really be that big of a deal if Heavy Storm came back? Yes, this card can be a complete blowout, and if paired with something like Tear Lament, you can possibly plus off of it too. But all in all, it's a one of. It's essentially the same thing as Duster if going second, and drawing into the late games, it's more balanced than something like Duster because it would force you to pop your own stuff too. Now, this is now seeing some play in the OCG because it was recently brought back, and it's not really making that big of a splash. So all in all, it's definitely fine for Heavy Storm to come back. It would definitely be cool and nostalgic to play with it again, and I think a lot of players would have fun utilizing this card. Now, for the last limited card, we have Pot of Prosperity. This card is absurd. Pot of Prosperity should not have been unlimited for as long as it has. It adds so much hyper consistency to so many different decks that if you see Prosperity, your chances are you're always playing. You're always resolving your cards. Digging 6 deep for any 1-card starter, or post-siding, you can even search for your side deck cards. You can search it evenly match, you can search a Judgment. All in all, Pot of Prosperity, it's very, very good, very consistent, one of the best pot cards out there, really. And the fact that it's this consistent and this splashable in so many decks, and decks such as Tenpai can still OTK through the half damage clause, this card needs to be taken care of. It doesn't need to be banned, but people seeing it as often as they do is a little much, so toning down that consistency of seeing Pot of Prosperity would be perfect. So that way the decks that still want to play it can still play it, but they're not going to see it every single game to see their full combo every single time. And those are the limited cards. Going into the semi-limits, we have Dimension Shifter. Yes. If you know by now, I hate Dimension Shifter. It's an unfun card, and it's a double turn skip. But there are certain decks that Shifter allows them to be able to compete and keep up with a bunch of these graveyard decks. With decks such as Snake Eyes and Yubel that are going to be running around going rampant. If you're not playing those decks, it's very difficult to do well and actually get wins against those consistently. So having Shifter in the game does give other decks a chance. However, having it be unlimited is a bit much because, again, it's a double turn skip that can't really be responded to because Gamma's at 1, Called By is at 1, and most people aren't citing the 1 of Shifter for the triple crossout. So really, there's only 2 answers to this. And if you're going second, there's only 1. And you have to play a brick with it. All in all, it's a bit much. Lowering the consistency of it would be better. If I personally had a choice, I'd rather ban this card. However, Shifter, again, it's one of those cards that helps a lot of other decks. And if you're not super skilled at the game, it can help get you wins against better players as well, which I think is needed in this game. But nonetheless, it's a fantastic card. I don't like it, but as a way to meet in the middle, I'm saying semi-limited because we just want to lower the consistency of how much they're saying it. But getting rid of it altogether isn't really the best plan either. Moving on to the next cards we have in the semi-limited. These are all essentially packaged together, but it's all the dragon rulers. So you've got Tidal, Blaster, Redox, and Tempest. Realistically, these can all be unlimited, but with the way Konami does things, they're going to slowly bring it back. So because these are limited, chances are they'll be semi-limited before becoming unlimited. These cards have been power crept. Dragon rulers wouldn't really do anything in today's meta, so it's definitely time to start bringing them off the list. And then finally, looking at the unlimited list, we have Chicken Game, which realistically, who would be playing 3 copies of Chicken Game nowadays? Yes, it can make some FTK decks more consistent than not, but it seems that Konami really likes FTK decks because, you know, they made, for example, Gimmick Puppet, an archetype solely based around FTKs. There are different kinds of FTKs in the game as well that don't really see competitive play. So overall, putting Chicken Game back to 3, it'll be fine, probably, but don't hold my word for that. But all in all, I can definitely see this card coming back without being a problem. Then we've got Armageddon Knight. This card, unlike Chicken Game, depending on the meta, this card can be very, very broken very easily. But if you think about it, most decks nowadays have something like Armageddon Knight that's a 1-card starter anyways. So how bad would it really be to put Armageddon Knight back to 3? There aren't really many dark decks right now or hero decks right now that would utilize this to its full extent. And honestly, bringing it back to 3 wouldn't really break the meta. Well, there's Orcust, I guess, maybe, but they would rather just summon their Dingirsu, or not Dingirsu, their Orcust guy that's also, I'm blanking on the name right now, but their Orcust guy that dumps to the grave. They'd rather just summon that guy rather than this, because this doesn't do anything else but dump a dark. And you pretty much have to commit your summon to it. So overall, playing 3 copies, it would help the consistency of some decks, but those decks could honestly use the consistency. Continuing, we've got Time Seal. This card's horrible. This card's absolutely terrible. It doesn't skip the draw phase that you want to skip. It skips the draw phase after it because they'll draw for turn and then you have to activate it and it's the next draw phase after. Overall, this card's not good. It wouldn't see any play. It can be at 10 and people wouldn't play it. And then the last card we have is Pankratops. Pankratops is a really cool card. And if Fenrir can be at 3, Pankratops can definitely be at 3. This is just a solid going second card that helps break boards, but is also not a complete blowout. And overall, it just trades well. All in all, Pankratops, it's a fine card to come back at 3. Even though it's at 2 right now, it's not really doing much. And it's just a cool card to have as a toolbox card in case you need it going second. All in all, it would be fine coming back to 3. And that's the list. I want to know what you all think. Did I miss anything? Were some of these takes a little too hot for you? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below. I'll definitely be checking it out. But if you stuck around this far, thank you so much. You really are awesome. You know who you are. But with that, thanks for watching. And until next time, peace.